the inner world part, which is your values, the way you work, the way you see success, and all of this. And we try to align all of that. And that's why I use a lot of journaling in as a support, especially for the inner world part. So I send my coaches prompts in relation to our discussions. So they write about them. They consistently, um, try to go deeper in their inner world. So the sessions that I do in that sense are not just guiding, but it's more an inner work, for the person. So the person, yes, becomes a better leader, but also becomes a better themselves. They become better at themselves, let's say.
Hello and welcome once again to the Leading with Integrity podcast. Have you ever heard of the idea of grounded leadership? If not, keep listening to find out what it is, what it means, how it works, because I'm joined today by my next guest, leadership coach Anil Erkan. We'll be hearing how he took quite an unusual route from a finance and risk management career into the leadership coaching world. That one experience, that one encounter that led him down a different path. We'll be talking about grounded leadership, about trust building, about self-awareness, authenticity, their role in leadership and beyond, as well as things like times of change, dealing with uncertainty, and some of the bigger challenges that leaders in those large corporate environments may face. So there's some interesting topics we're going to be covering today and a great guest to talk them through with as well. If you're enjoying the show so far, hopefully this isn't the first episode you've listened to, but if you want to go deeper into the real human side of leadership, the messy bits, the growth moments, the I hope no one notices I'm winging it phase, then come along and join us at my Integrity Leaders online leadership community. Head over to the website. It's leadingwithintegrity.co.uk. That's in the show notes and on the screen if you're watching the video version as well. On our website, you will find a few free guides, practical tools. There's my Leadership Heroes quiz there. The real magic, though, is in joining the community itself. It's a people-first, sci-fi flavoured leadership crew for anyone who wants to lead with more confidence, clarity, and integrity, as the name suggests. Even if you're not sure yet whether you're a real leader or not, in inverted commas, for those not watching the video, it's still the place for you. You can join for free as a leadership explorer. You can connect with leaders like you. You can get the support you wish you'd had on day one. And there are as well paid options with more content, more features, higher levels of access, if that is for you as well. So there's plenty of options to consider. There's 3 options to consider, but you'll find out more on the website. As I say, the link's in the show notes. If you have questions, message me anytime. My LinkedIn details are down there as well. And yeah, share your leadership stories.
Welcome to the Leading with Integrity podcast. Leadership talk for the modern manager. With your host, David Hatch.
Anil, welcome to Leading with Integrity. It's lovely to have you on the show today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Over to you, really. Tell the listeners a bit about your career so far, what you do today, why you do it.
Yes, thank you. So I'm a leadership coach. But my career started off from normally coaches are known to be from people side of things or HR or the softer side of things. I'm coming from a accounting and finance background, and I transitioned into internal audit, risk management, and internal controls along the way. And the later years of my career, I finished off as a head of risk and mainly a risk person. I've been doing board roles in terms of setting up risk management systems in companies as well before the coaching journey started. So I've worked in companies like I started my career with Arthur Andersen and then moved to Citibank and to PricewaterhouseCoopers and so on and so forth, and big Turkish companies like Sabancı and STFA. So I have a good amount of corporate background and corporate experience that I bring to my coaching. But my coaching the journey started with my training in 2018, and in 2019 I just started, this journey, and I left the corporate at that time. And since then, yeah, I've been, and then we have a company now in Turkey, Paramita Partners. I'm one of the co-founders. We serve corporate clients both locally and internationally. We All the partners also have their own individual portfolios. So it's yeah, it's all about coaching now.
And it sounds like you got plenty to keep you busy as well. So yeah.
Yes, yes, thank you. I mean, I don't see coaching as work.
Yeah.
I like what I do, and I get paid for it as well. So that's a very win-win situation. These kind of things I believe are hard to do as a job. I think you have to be really passionate and really like it.
Mhm.
Yeah, so it's for me, it's just trying to help and guide people as much as I can.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's I think it's quite an unusual background for a leadership coach as well, I have to say. Was there like a reason? Was there a trigger? Was there what kind
Yeah,
of
actually,
gave you the leadership bug, if you like?
it's a very there's a small anecdote to go along with how I started, because so I was practicing Dharma, as you can see from my nice painting of Buddha. And I started to meet a lot of coaches when I was practicing Dharma. We had a teacher in Turkey, and there was lots of coaches, and one of them was a coach for a long time. He had his own training as well, like he trains people to coach. And one day, in his training, he needed someone to be coached by his students, and somebody canceled last minute or something, and he was like very urgently looking for someone. And we have a WhatsApp group, and my wife was like, why don't you go and like help him out, because like he needs. I was like, yeah, it was the weekend, we were home, it was rainy, so I just went to help my friend. And I run over there, like, what do I do? Nothing, you just sit down and answer questions. Okay. And I wasn't very happy at that time in my corporate role, and so I just started talk. I mean, they were asking what's going on, the main challenges, and I explained my situation in the corporate world. And those three students that coached me, I was like, wow, this is powerful. I need to learn this. And at the end, I went to him and I said, sign me up. I'm coming. I didn't really expect to just do coaching, but I was very, very like fell in love with it just because it was so powerful. Yeah. So that's how I got into it.
Yeah. No, that's a pretty cool story, actually. And yeah, quite brave as well, subjecting yourself to students like that. Like,
Yeah, it was interesting because like what do I talk, and when they said what's the main challenge, well, I started to talk about just what I started complaining to them actually about the things happening in the corporate. And of course, as coaches, there are you can really ask powerful questions to really dive deep in. So
Mhm.
that made it powerful.
Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, I mean, it's a great way of understanding something before you do it as well, isn't it? Is
Yes,
being
seeing
coached
it in
first.
action
Yeah.
firsthand.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and then I just
Yeah.
started coaching people as like just to learn better, to get the practice. Initially, like the first couple of years, I was also doing consulting work uh, because you can't have a good amount of coaching portfolio right off the bat. So after I left the corporate, uh, initially I was doing a lot of consulting work, but then slowly, consulting work went to, zero and coaching. And then after just around COVID, we formed the company, and then it was just all about coaching.
Yeah. Lovely. Well, so one of the phrases, one of the concepts that's come up in my research of you is this idea of grounded leadership.
Yes.
So can you tell us what that means to you, and how does it help leaders, particularly in times of change and uncertainty? I mean, you mentioned
Yeah.
COVID already. That's the big one recently, isn't it?
Yes, definitely. So many growth-minded senior leaders, when they are trying to go up the ranks or make a good career out of them, out of whatever they are doing, there comes a point when they start to feel stuck between who they really are and who they aspire to become. So I grounded to make them go further. We work together to uncover the hidden patterns that limit their impact, and we work on their mindset, their presence, and especially their self-awareness, so that they can lead leading with integrity and building trust along the way. So grounded leader is actually becoming back to who you are, becoming your authentic self. Yeah. Because in the corporate, it's not so easy always to be yourself, especially the higher you go up. Uh, Challenges start, values can start to get a bit, tested, let's say. So there can be many different things that come up, and it, of course, creates a lot of inner tension and stress. Should I do this? Should I not do this? If I do this, will I lose my job, or how will my career get impacted? And all of these things. And they could also be ethical things, by the way. I'm not hinting at unethical things either. But so bringing someone back to themselves is being grounded, being who you are.
I've not spent a lot of time in big corporates, I have to say. I've seen it on a smaller scale in smaller businesses as well. But there is this kind of, it's almost like an indoctrination, isn't it? Where everyone almost gets like cloned in terms of their personality and their workplace behaviors and things like that. And like conformity is given too much of an emphasis, I think. And my assumption has always been like the bigger the organization, the worse that is. But I don't have any data to prove it.
Yes, I mean, it can be. It also depends on the tone set by the leaders and the tone at the top. But let me give an example. Let's say a person, and I work a lot with like this style of leaders, or this in these situations. They get promoted, they get into the executive committee, for example, and of course these are already successful people, and they already know what they are doing technically, but the executive committee is a totally new environment. So how much do they talk? Do they talk at all? Do they, if there is anything they're opposed to, do they oppose openly? Or is there a separate culture there? Like, how can they be just themselves? Should they be just themselves? So we try to look into how they can transition into that by keeping that grounded nature of things. Because when you talk, and if you're saying something wrong or that's not really taken well, then they feel maybe threatened, or it's risky in different ways. So how can they be there, be present there, and to be themselves at most possible way?
Yeah, I think it does take a lot of courage to be able to do that. I think particularly in that sort of culture where it isn't always encouraged. Let's put it politely.
Yeah, so that's what you have to basically read the room and see where you
Mm,
fit into that room. How do you feel? Um, so it doesn't mean that you have to do just what you think, of course, but uh, how do you blend in? How do you not lose yourself, but also adapt? And so that becomes tricky because what generally corporate leaders along the way in their career face is you start off whenever somebody starts after college, university, and they get into the corporate world and start working, especially the first 5 to 8 years. If you do what you're told, if you do it well, if you work hard, you go up the ranks. Like there's not going to be too much uh, obstacles along the way. But after being a manager or a senior manager, I mean, titles are not so important, but those levels, uh, the road to go up is not your technical know-how and your hard work. Uh, yes, you may still need to work hard, but it doesn't guarantee your path upwards, is what I'm trying to say.
mm,
So then you need other skill sets. You need leadership qualities. You need communication qualities and when to take decisions, how to take decisions. So all these different skill sets and your technical know-how still has to be there, etc. But then it becomes a totally different game. So the first 10, 15 years is a different game. After that, it's a different game. And if you can adapt by not losing who you are, you're going to be a senior executive, successful and happy.
yeah. I mean, that's the goal, I guess. You mentioned earlier about hidden patterns that can hold people back. Can you give us some examples of those?
Yes, so there's actually, yeah, I mean, I can give from people that I'm working with, of course, without giving their names or etc. But I'm working with a senior leader in a finance industry, and he was um, just like I was mentioning. So he's a very hands-on leader, and his pattern is to manage very directly. So now, and that's how he had his success. So that's what he knows what to do. But now his team is much bigger and he has only now 4 direct reports, but the levels have increased and the number of people he's managing is now much, much bigger. So now he can only lead by direction and by letting go and creating the space for these direct reports to do their job well rather than getting his hands dirty and doing. And that, of course, creates a lot of inner tension because you have never done this before. And you feel like you're out of control because if you're not doing it and they are doing it, if you go too deep, you're going to disturb them or, create an environment where you're micromanaging maybe even depending on how much you go deeper on it. So the patterns are really our personal patterns. Or communication. If you went up the ranks with what we call the driver voice, which is very a voice that's more direct, more demanding, more not aggressive, but more very to the point. But then when you have a team and when you go up the ranks, maybe you have to have a supportive voice. So your pattern of communication may need to change. Now, this is hard because if that's what you know to work internally, and somebody says, well, we need to change that, the mind doesn't easily accept because it has worked. There's proof, there's data from the past, but it doesn't mean it's going to work from this point onwards. So this is why acceptance and looking inwards and making the person look inwards to find the courage to initiate these communications is what we work on. So we try to dissect the pattern and the roots of the pattern so that we don't want to let go of the directive voice, for example, but we want to make sure that in a necessary context, the supporting voice can be put into action, which means you need self-awareness and you need intentionality. Maybe I can go deeper on that. So let's say I'm in a meeting, or this person is in a meeting, and his normal self is to go with a driving voice. But looking at the room, looking at the people in the room and whoever is there and the context, this person has to have the ability to catch himself while if he falls to the side of the directive voice and say, oh, I'm going to my old habits. I should revert back to my supporting voice. Now, this sounds easy when we explain it like this, but it's not so easy to do because it's a very ingrained habit. So you have to catch yourself and pull yourself back. So you have to go into the meeting with intentionality and then have the self-awareness to catch yourself there. So this is just a small example of where we try to focus on so that we can have behavior change. Because otherwise, coaching sessions are very powerful, especially for awareness. But if you don't put them into action, those awarenesses, and try to learn from those actions, the development doesn't happen. So you can have very intellectually stimulating discussions just like we are having here. But if you want them to take you somewhere, you have to try, fail, and then come back to the coach, talk about it, and what went wrong, what went right, should we change this, should we change that, and then rinse and repeat until we come to a good place. But the essence is for the person, because I can see it, like externally, somebody can see a pattern, but it doesn't matter if I see it. The person has to acknowledge that the pattern. Otherwise, they will just reject it. So those are the areas that we try to go deeper on, so that because if no acceptance, the development journey will not really start.
Mm. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you've touched on a lot of concepts there. I think that there's a couple that stand out in particular that I hear time and time again whenever I talk to an expert such as yourself, particularly a coach, is that self-awareness piece. It comes up a lot in learning and development as well. For effective learning, you've got to be self-aware enough to, first of all, like be open to learn, which isn't a given either. There's quite a lot of leaders and managers out in the world there who think they're already like the perfect specimen and they don't need any development in their leadership. Yeah. Ironically, they're usually the least effective ones.
Exactly.
Not sure why that might be.
Well, because we are accepting that this is working, but everything is changing. So when everything is changing and you are being static, there will come a point where it's going to stop working. So like now I'm 52. Even when before I was in my 50s in the corporate, the new generation that were coming in have a totally different way of looking at work-life balance, like remote work after COVID has become a thing. And so it's a totally different dynamic. So as a leader, knowing these concepts is not enough. Understanding how these people are thinking, what's important to them, listening. I think these are the critical parts. Otherwise, we would just feed everything into AI or some powerful computer and we would get all the answers. And Unfortunately,
well,
that doesn't work.
give it 10 years, that might be where we are. Who knows? Yeah, I mean, it is an intriguing one, though. I think it also gets tied up in some of these big myths about leadership as well that we hear quite a lot. One of those being, of course, the classic misunderstanding of what leadership is about, and feeling like you're the one who has to have the answer and that's your role in the situation, which I think I'd like to say it's been disproved, but there's still plenty of people under that misunderstanding, aren't there?
Yes, I mean, so there's also cultural aspects there, like
True.
in different countries and different cultures, there are different things to that, and this is what we also work on in terms of trust building, because if you have all the answers, it's very hard to build trust. And let's look at leadership definition in a very basic way. What is leadership? Like if you Google leadership or go on LinkedIn and look at leadership, there is like so much definitions and so many articles and sources. Basically, leadership is how to activate people to take action, to guide them to do certain things. This is the very, very simplistic, of course, way of looking at it. But even if we just take that simplistic definition, if I'm to drive people for certain actions, initially they might start off with trusting me, and they say, okay, Anil has a nice CV, he looks like he knows what he's doing, let's do what he says. But after, if it's not working, or if there are issues that I didn't tell them about or something, they're like, yeah, maybe he's not really like, so what do we do? And when they come back, if I just push them away and say, yeah, I know, I have all the answers, and I talk like that, of course, what that will bring is that will deteriorate the trust. And when there is no trust, there is no communication. Well, there is, but it's ineffective. So trust to enable effective communication is this. If you trust me and there is something you don't agree with, you will tell me. In the corporate landscape, what this means is if I tell what I think to my boss, I won't get into trouble, or I won't be like, my performance will not be impacted by this, or things like that. So if I have that trust, I'll openly say, yeah, I mean, I'm seeing this from this angle. It doesn't seem like that. And when you have that conversation and you create as a leader that safe space, then what happens is, even if it doesn't go their way, there generally is a place of understanding that happens in that conversation, and they will still go and do it. What will happen is they will feel more connected to the cause and what you're trying to do, and because there was an agreement in that conversation, the accountability is also going to be there. And so when you're doing something with accountability and agreement, the chances of getting good results are higher than the opposite. Like if you play it out on the opposite side, if there is no trust and you come to the leader, you go to the leader and say, well, I don't know if you're not going to really say all these things, but you might just bring it up. And then if you get a pushback, you'll just say, okay, you'll go do it, but you're not really doing it because you believe in it anymore. You're just doing it because you were told to do it. And so what happens is, after, if it doesn't work out, or if there's a problem or something, and then the leader says, well, what happened? And, we talked about this. Well, I just said I would do it, but I didn't really, I knew this was, so the person will probably not really, is that person going to feel accountable? Probably not. And so the way they're going to do that thing, whatever that is probably not going to be, when you do something you believe, the energy you put, the way you try to finish it off and to get it done. And if you do something you don't really believe in, you're probably going to do the minimum requirements, or like you're not going to, I mean, even if you're a professional, your inner world is not going to let you do it as if it was the other way. So the results are probably going to get impacted accordingly. And of course, this is going to create an atmosphere, a climate. And when the climate is not good, it just starts to go downwards. So trust is very, very fundamental. Yeah.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. I think the easiest example to talk about in this context is like time, isn't it? And that whole discretionary effort conversation. I don't know that I like that example though, because I think we're moving beyond the time equals productivity phase of work. At least I hope we are. Like, it's not about being at your desk 9 to 5 anymore. It should be about the output and the quality of it. So if we put it in those terms, like, if you don't have trust, I think everyone has like levels of performance, levels of quality of their output, right? And I think if the trust isn't there, if the buy-in's not there, if you're not as a leader inspiring people to do their best work for whatever reason that might be, whether it's the culture, whether it's, you just don't communicate effectively, or you're maybe not a very nice person at work, we've all been there. Then you're going to be less likely to see that kind of that top level of performance from your people. They'll do that, to start with. They might sort of drop from top to maybe like good enough. Like, I'll do enough, but I'm leaving on time today, so you're not getting the most out of me. Yeah. Or, and over time that will slowly degrade further and further until you have these phenomena like quiet quitting and, just people are totally checked out. They do literally the minimum, and that's all you'll ever get then.
Yes.
And then finally they'll just leave.
Yeah.
And the speed that you go from that top to the bottom is flexible as well, I've seen.
Oh, yeah. And it does not take long for all of these to happen. Like 6 months to a year is already enough to just go very fast. It doesn't really matter if you're remote or like it's
No. I think there's a relationship to like the severity of the issue as well. Like, if there's like one really bad thing happens, it's going to be like almost overnight probably.
Yes.
Whereas if it's just like a gradual decrease over time, like probably a lot of companies saw because of COVID, for example, then you could almost like not notice it until it's too late in that sort of situation.
Yes, it's true. But yeah, the foundation is the trust, and it's not just about, when I say creating a safe space, I'm talking about not just like it won't impact the other person's performance or something, but the psychology of feeling safe and being taken care of, that builds trust. And for that to happen, leaders also need to show some vulnerability when they make mistakes, that they accept these mistakes and they have these discussions. Like, one of the things that we that, depending on the context, but just to give the example, we make them do sometimes. I make them do sometimes mistakes meetings, which is maybe you have heard of them. I don't know. So everybody talks about their mistakes of the last month or something, and and if you as a leader can kick off that conversation, and then people start to talk about what was their mistake, and then you start to hear conversations like, why didn't you tell me? I could have helped you. Or why didn't you mention this? Like, and it starts to create that really team cohesiveness, that bringing the team together.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know what we would have called it. We would have like, I guess, corrective reviews, that sort of thing. But I find, I mean, it's very difficult to do that in a constructive, productive way, because especially if there's a pressure kind of situation, like the natural inclination is it very quickly turns into blaming rather than learning. And I think that's a real challenge for leaders as well in those scenarios.
But that's exactly how the leader should be. Like, the leader is going to be running this meeting or get together or workshop, however we want to call it.
Yeah.
And that's why when they're first going to be vulnerable about their mistake, and then one or two people can start like to popcorn talk, it might not happen immediately in the first one. But if people consistently see that this meeting is happening and there are people that talk about their mistakes and nothing is happening in a bad way to them, then it starts to bring it up. Because talking about a mistake, very interestingly, also brings relief to people. Because when you make a mistake and you're like, oh, what, like, you try to fix it, you don't want to tell anybody, maybe you feel shame or you feel discomfort. And, but if you can share it, if you know that you can share it, the next time you make a mistake, you might not even wait for the meeting. You might probably go to one of your teammates or to your leader and say, look, this is what happened. And that those are very, they seem to be small things, but these things really make big shifts in how teams really work well.
Yeah, I mean, it can be a small thing, but I do think it's a massive red flag. Like if you find yourself being genuinely afraid of a mistake and afraid of the consequences or what that's going to result in for, maybe your job, maybe your career, maybe your paycheck, or maybe just like your ability to keep going to work and feeling comfortable there at a much more basic level. That's such a red flag to me about like the culture you're working in and potentially the leader you're working under.
Yes.
And then from the opposite side of that, the other perspective, like as the leader, if your people are afraid of telling you about mistakes, I mean, we're back into self-awareness again, aren't we? But
Yes.
you want people to tell you about the mistakes, because if they don't, you don't know about them, and who knows what will happen as a result. Like,
yeah. So actually, I'll tie this into the bigger picture of things because we went into the team part of things. But from the leader point of view, as I had mentioned, so taking action. But the main thing that a leader, his job is to observe. So the main basic question to ask for a leader is, what is happening here in my company, in my department, in my team? What's going on? This is actually the Leadership Theory by Ronald Heifetz. And so he says, okay, you have to look, actually he calls it going up on the balcony. So you go up to the balcony, you try to see what's going on. And very interestingly, Heifetz says, you also include yourself into the picture. Am I also part of the problem? Am I doing something that I should be changing or not doing or, whatever? So you make that self-reflection and you look at what's going on. So you have an assessment. Now, actually in his book, I think he says 50% of leadership problems are diagnosis problems. So if you diagnose it, if you have the diagnosis wrong, it's going to be harder to move things along, because like a doctor, if you have the diagnosis wrong and you give the wrong medication, that's going to I mean, at the end maybe you'll figure it out, but it's going to be a tough period. So diagnosis is very powerful and very important, but how do you then do powerful diagnosis? What do you need? You need two things. You need information and you need data. Plus, you also need your self-awareness. Because if you are also afraid of failure or things that like your career, all these things, those might have an impact on your decisions or the things or you might see things the way they're not really like that. So your inner world as a leader has an impact on your perception. So you really have to have that inner self-awareness in a very strong way. So once you have that, so how do you get the information and data? So data is what you get from your company's systems or your But information is what you get from your people, the things that are not in the systems. And that's where you need the trust and communication. I'm not talking about people telling on each other or something like that. Having that open conversation and communication gives you the information. And that's why when I work with leaders, one-on-ones, we always change the one-on-ones. One-on-ones are generally wrong. They are wrongly structured. They are just small task updates. It's just a one-on-one, but like it's very operational. It should be different. I don't want to, just segue into one-on-ones, but one-on-ones is a whole area to look at for leaders, especially if you have big teams. So the communication and information, once you have the diagnosis, then the decision making kicks in. Because, okay, now you have the diagnosis and now you have to make decisions. So the timeliness of the decisions and all these things. So that's why leadership becomes very challenging. So you need a lot of these different skill sets to come together. But at the end of the day, that's why I always, the grounded leader, why I say that is, if you're grounded, you are self-aware. If you are self-aware, the probability of making the right decisions, the probability of diagnosing correctly, the probability of putting yourself into the picture and leaving yourself out of the picture where necessary is going to be much more healthier.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's really interesting the way you contrasted between data and information there as well.
Yeah.
Tying information to people specifically, because like I guess the dictionary definition of those two words, data is just like it's raw figures or whatever it might be, numbers or results, whatever.
Yeah.
Whereas information is useful data. And I think that's something like modern society we forget, particularly in the AI age, right? Like there's loads and loads of data, but how much of it is really information, i.e. how much of it is useful? And I mean, I love that you tied that to the people. So the useful data comes from the people.
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
That's amazing. Really like that.
Yeah. Thank you. And so it's all about the people, right? Because what
Absolutely.
you see on a report and what's really going on in the operations or on the field, it's very limited. I mean, I'm sure there are companies that have everything very fine, but it's very rare.
Maybe.
Generally,
Don't think
the
I've met
people
one.
know better. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's good. So I'm just keeping an eye on the time because I know you have other things to get to. So, I mean, I think we've talked quite a lot about like the common challenges, about the way that your coaching works and the frameworks that you help people with. Can you talk a bit about some of the more specific challenges that a leader might face today when they're maybe transitioning into a new role, or they're dealing with increased pressure, or they're expanding their team?
Yeah. So it's actually more about the transition is generally more about the skill sets and how you are prepared for that. So when somebody asks me like, what should I concentrate on? Now, of course, it depends on the person, but just as I was mentioning a little bit a few minutes ago, there's a couple of things that are apart from self-awareness. Like self-awareness is, of course, a very main pillar and all of that, but strategic thinking and decision making. If these and these are skill sets. I mean, you need to work on these, and these are not like taught or passed on just because you have a leader that's very good at these. I mean, you might pick up on some of these things, but you really need to go deep on those because everybody is looking for all the information before make their decisions. It's not possible. You're always going to have something missing, and or some people go with their gut or things like that, and it of course doesn't work. So how do you know where to stop and to pull the trigger and make the decision? So And how do you strategically look at all of what you're doing, what your department is doing, or what your organization is doing? So those two, I believe, are critical for the transition. And so the way I try to implement this in what when I work with people is I do what I call development sessions and also what I call I guess we can call them the normal coaching sessions. So coaching sessions are actually a tool for awareness, and you get the awareness. But as I mentioned at the very beginning of our session, um, awareness is not enough. Then we follow that up with action, and we that rinse and repeat process I mentioned. But before that as well, if we are going to work on these skill sets, we read a lot of resources, books, articles, podcasts like the one we're doing here, and we try to extract the information so that they get the learning from it. I don't teach people, by the way. I mean, I'm not teaching people in sessions, but the development session is where I use the information in the resource to ask powerful questions to connect to their realities. So then they are internalizing the information, but also relating it to their situation and to their context. That's powerful. Is it enough? No. Again, the action is critical. So always putting it, trying it, and trying to see how it works. Does it work? Did I have some inner world area that prevented me? Like maybe in a meeting, my communication wasn't good enough to implement this. So then we dive into that. So it's a bit of a there are different areas that we try to work on in transition. One is, of course, the self-awareness. The other is we decide on the skill sets necessary to improve on. When I say skill set, it's the development session, it's the learning, and then the inner world part, which is your values, the way you work, the way you see success, and all of this. And we try to align all of them. And that's why it never came up so far, but I use a lot of journaling as a support, especially for the inner world part. So I send my coaches prompts in relation to our discussions. So they write about them. They consistently, try to go deeper in their inner world. So the sessions that I do in that sense are not just guiding, but it's more an inner work for the person. So the person, yes, becomes a better leader, but also becomes a better themselves. They become better at themselves, let's say. That's a good way to say it.
Yeah. A concept that I've been really fascinated by for a while now is this idea around quality decision making.
Mm-hmm.
And he mentioned just now about like you're never going to get perfect information. You're not going to be able to make a perfect decision. And I think one of the big reasons for indecision in a lot of leadership roles, positions, individuals, even in their lives, is you're hanging on for that perfect decision. You think if you just have enough information, you just wait enough time, or whatever else it is, you'll make the absolute perfect decision and everything will be great.
Yeah.
And what I like about that idea of quality decision making is you're accepting that perfection isn't achievable. And then you're understanding like, what is the quality level of my decision? Where does it sit on that scale? And having that awareness of that before you so you're not, it's expectation management in a way, isn't it? You're not expecting perfection in the result either, but you're also acknowledging that, if it's a low quality decision, let's say, then you're acknowledging the fact that you might change that decision next week.
Yeah.
Because again, like another thing people do, once that's done, decision made, wash their hands of it, don't need to think about that anymore.
Yeah.
Whereas quite often things change.
Exactly.
And you need to change the decision.
Exactly. And so in terms of the inner world part of things for the decision is, when you make a decision for a certain result, for a certain output, just like you were saying. But in terms of, again, what you were mentioning about expectation management is, if that output doesn't happen, other outputs are going to happen. And you have to have the ability to predict, if that what I'm looking for doesn't happen, what may happen, and get the organization to, first of all, you have to accept, like, if you are going for one side of the coin, you have to accept the others. This coin has the other side as well. So that has to be internalized. So when you're making a decision, you're not making it for A. You're making it for A and B. And that has to be openly discussed. But generally, nobody wants to hear the bad things. So only the A is very polished in presentations and in meetings. Like, yes, this is like, and nobody really goes near the B. And then when, B happens, like, it's like, oh, well, we should have discussed B a little bit and internalized B. So, and that's where leadership becomes important. So not just taking the decision, but making the people digest this with the B in it.
Absolutely. And I guess like your past career history is probably quite helpful in that, like the best case, the worst case, the in-betweens and all of that sort of thing.
Yes. So
yeah.
In terms of risk management, exactly. Risk management is actually the science of decision making. So when people were asking me, like, what are you doing? I'm just helping the board make decisions. It's showing them what can happen and what cannot happen, and what they need to know before. So if they know the risks, they can make better decisions, basically. And actually, leadership is no different. You have to know, as I was saying, the A's and the B's, with whatever information you have, and go from there.
Indeed. Well, hopefully we've got time for one final question for you.
Yes, of course.
Because this is my favorite one, so I have to ask everyone.
Okay,
so it's called Leadership Heroes.
Leadership Heroes.
So the question is, if you could pick one person, but they could be literally anyone you could think of, so they could be alive or dead, past or present, real or fictitious even, but it's got to be somebody who, in your opinion, would perfectly embody leadership. So who would that person be for you and why?
Yeah. So it's Atatürk. Atatürk is the founder of Turkey. And the why is, of course, a long story, but the way we have to go into history and what he did and all these things, but the way he had a team at the top and the way he managed the team, the way he listened to the people, and the way he took risks and took critical decisions, because he was an officer in the Ottoman Empire army, and he actually goes against the army to start the independence, to form the new republic, let's say. And so those are, if it would have gone wrong, maybe we would have talked him as a traitor, because if the empire had stayed and won, he would have seen as a person that had gone against the structure. But apart from that, his communication and his executive presence, actually, I don't like to call it charisma, his executive presence, even nowadays, he's still very prominent. He's very well known, researched. And so, yeah, definitely Atatürk would be the main leader. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and I think you get extra points because nobody's chosen him before.
Oh, okay.
So that is, well done. and such an interesting character from history as well. Yeah, I mean, I'd heard the name at least. I don't know a lot about him specifically. I know a little bit about the Ottoman Empire, which, again, like it feels like one of those things that was lost to history a little bit. Like, nobody really mentions it, but it went on for, was it like 600-700 years?
Very long, very long. I mean, like, of course, it's quite long. And yeah, it was different in its ways. And so the empire, of course, basically what we were taught in history class was that the way the empire was ruling was like if they needed resources, they would just go and conquer. And so the first, and then they would tax, of course. But of course, collecting taxes and all of that, it's not easy. So the production or the movement of goods was not really prioritized. It was just like, okay, we need resources, let's go and get Bulgaria or whatever, and then tax it. But so it wasn't creating something for the future, and so it was very easy for it to collapse. Actually, yeah.
I mean, still, it lasted a very long time.
Yes,
so they must have got something right. I mean, there's not many civilizations that were around when the Romans were and the First World War. Like, that's a long period of history.
Yes, definitely. Yeah. It's a very strong empire, of course, and strong history. And so going against that and then forming a republic from that is, and then fighting all the different nations because actually, if you look, it came so small. Turkey became the size of similar to Switzerland, and then it went back to regain the territories back with his leadership and genius, let's say.
Yeah, that's interesting. Well, you've inspired me to go and learn more about him. So thank you.
Thank you for having me. This was great. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, it's been a really good conversation. Thanks for your time. And I will get your website links and things and pop those in the show notes so that everyone can learn more about you if they wish. And
thank you.
Yeah, that's all we've got time for. So thank you, Anil, for being with us.
Thank you so much. And yeah, very nice. And hopefully we'll do it again sometime.
Yeah, absolutely. Welcome back anytime.
Thank you.
Huge thanks to Anil for that conversation today. Hopefully he made his next meeting on time and I didn't keep him late. But some great topics covered there and really interesting bit of history there at the end as well. That's a period and a location of history that I, for one, need to learn more about, and he's piqued my interest there, so I'll definitely be going and doing that. Listener, viewer, if you would like to learn more about Anil and the work that he does, the website links and a couple of socials, at least one, will be in the show notes. So pay him a visit, drop him a message, reach out. I'm sure he'd love to hear from you. And if you are listening today because leadership feels heavier than you expected, maybe you're a new manager, a first-time founder, or you've suddenly found yourself responsible for other people who are looking to you for direction, guidance, inspiration, then you are exactly who I built the Integrity Leaders community for. Come and join us today. You are welcome. You are invited cordially. Inside, you'll find support, training courses, relatable other leaders that you can connect with, and a place where you don't have to pretend you've got it all figured out already. So whether you are feeling like an imposter, whether you're struggling with burnout, or you're just trying to lead your team without turning into a corporate Sith Lord, you don't have to do it alone. Click the link in the show notes or head to leadingwithintegrity.co.uk to join us today. Or if you would like to talk through it first, learn more about it beforehand, drop me a message on LinkedIn. Genuinely, I would love to hear what you're navigating, what you're struggling with, what you're looking to learn. Because whatever stage of your leadership journey you're at, there will be a seat for you at our table. And I hope to see you inside very soon. That's all I've got time for this week. Join me again next week when I'll be chatting with my next guest, Pascal Umbert. We'll be talking about all sorts of things: productivity, patterns, leadership, why your internal wiring might be holding you back from the success that you want as a leader, as a business owner in life. And of course, with a subject like that, we're going to be getting into things like nature versus nurture and authenticity, etc., etc., etc. It's a great conversation. I'm looking forward to it. I say that, I've already recorded it. I'm looking forward to listening back to it in the edit before next week. Hopefully you're going to look forward to it now as well, and you'll be joining us next week to hear more about it. Thank you so much for being with us today, and until next time, be a leader, not a boss.